now call to order the Board of Commissioners meeting for Thursday, June 14th, 2018 at 6:30. Do I have approval for the agenda? Do I have a motion?
I make that motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
Discussion.
Commissioner Pollard?
Yeah, I've long felt that there's something wrong with having an action item at the end of a committee report, because approval of warrants and so forth is new business. And I think it should be listed under new business and not part of the committee report.
Now, my thought would be if the warrants are due at the month and we don't approve the warrants, then that puts our payments and our approval 60 days out.
I think it's not an issue of whether the warrants will be approved. They'll be approved, but they need to be in the proper place on the agenda. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, I see. So where would you rather see them?
Well, as new business.
As new business?
It is new business.
I see what you're saying. Is there any other comments about that?
Maybe Skip has a comment on that. Of course, you know, the chair can pretty much do what she wants, but I think that's the proper way. I don't know of any other organization that makes an action item like that part of a committee report.
I need a pen.
Well, Madam President and Commissioner
Yes.
Pollard, it really is the preference of your board and body, and it varies from commission to others. Sometimes they are listed as new items or new action to be taken.
New business.
New business. Other times it's by topic. So as you would go down, you would have an action item under committee report or a resolution to be adopted after you discuss that item. So it's really your preference. There's no specificity identified in Robert's Rules of Order. We are going to talk about tonight under Robert's Rules of Order the adoption of an agenda. So
Yes.
Okay.
timely that we're going to talk about that. But what you've heard today is a comment from Commissioner Pollard. Unless it's a motion that's seconded, you know you have to adopt your agenda, and you have a prearranged agenda that's sent out. He could move that you reorder the agenda if there's a second and it's passed by a majority, then you reorder your agenda. If you don't, you just follow it.
I'm not proposing to reorder the agenda. I'm proposing that the action item currently attached to the committee report be moved under new business because it is new business. But once something is on the agenda, it's very difficult to change, as you're implying. So you've got it typed out, and if this is the way the board wants to do it, fine. But I just think it's improper. And I've never seen it before for any other organization where the committee report is a action item mixed up.
Maybe I can suggest that our plate's pretty full, but maybe the ad hoc bylaws committee now look at that in terms of the order of business.
Yeah, but would you think that approval of warrants would go under like a treasurer's report?
Again, it's the preference of your body, of your organization, how you want to run your meeting. And as you know, we're working on rules of procedures for your meeting. So it's how you want to operate your meeting, how you want to draft your agenda.
No.
How you want to run your meeting.
For me, it makes sense because each committee has a certain responsibility, and they bring that responsibility or that request to the board. And when we approve their, like the warrants really belong in Finance Committee. I know there's things in facilities that belong there, and the bylaws committee, when they bring the bylaws, it will come to us via that committee, and we will vote after that committee brings it to us, and we have discussion, and then we'll vote on it. So it makes sense to me. Now, it may not to others.
Makes sense to leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
The thing is that decisions cannot be made in committee. And by doing it this way, it also indicates a decision. And yes, facilities or medical can also make recommendations, but if there is going to be a change or action item, it would be under new business. So at any rate, so that we don't waste time, we've got a long agenda.
Yeah.
Just go ahead this time, but please reconsider that, perhaps in the bylaws.
Okay. All righty, so,
So was there a motion?
no, there wasn't a motion, it was a
There was
comment.
no
Yes,
motion.
comment.
Okay.
That was a
Thank you.
comment.
Well, let's just move on.
I made a motion to approve the agenda.
Yeah. Nice second.
Report.
There's a North Bend food bank, isn't there, and it's Snoqualmie? Is it just one food bank?
There actually, yeah, correct. There's a food bank in Falls City. There's a food bank in North Bend. There are 2 food banks in Snoqualmie. And I believe there's also a food bank in Carnation.
Plus, there's a food bank in Preston.
And, oh, that's right, I'm sorry.
there is one
Yes.
there.
Okay, well, when we say at the food bank, which one are we talking about?
Well, because the title of this item is Snoqualmie Valley Food Bank Community Resource Fair, I shortened, I abbreviated just because I'd already put the title of the food
There's
bank
only one
in the report.
Snoqualmie Valley. Food
Snoqualmie Valley Food Bank, as opposed to the other one in Snoqualmie, which is the Mount Si Food Bank.
That one's in North Bend, isn't it?
I stand corrected, thank you.
And now we get our legal counsel to give us a little bit of help.
Thank you, Madam President, and board members again. This is your 5 minutes of Robert's Rule reminders. And the topic this evening is going to be addressing the order of business, the orders of the day, and the agenda or program. And what that means to everyone except for Robert's Rules is an agenda. And as you'll note, organization meetings in which adoption of an agenda is large organizations, sometimes it's hard to extremely follow all their requirements, but they do have a procedure for adoption, in which case it's usually done at the outset of a session and intended to cover the entire session. But if you move down to the 3rd and 4th paragraph, this is the customary approach for you. In some organizations, it is customary to send out each member in advance of a meeting an order of business or agenda, with some indication of the matters to be considered. Such an agenda is often provided for information only, with no intention or practice of submitting for adoption. In your case, you in fact are submitting it for adoption. It's a pre-circulated agenda, and it's usually formally adopted at your session. It is not binding as to detail or order, other than it lists from the pre-existing orders of the day. So when you get down to the changing of an agenda, you have a proposed agenda that you come to your meetings with. So when the adoption of a proposed agenda is pending, it's subject to amendment by majority. So these are the 3 takeaways. One is it's before the body. It's subject to amendment, as you did tonight. You reviewed it, you chose not to amend it, but you had discussion about it. After the agenda has been adopted by the assembly, no change can be made except by a 2/3 vote. So if you adopted your agenda tonight and then someone made a motion that they wanted to reorder it or add something, it could be amended by a 2/3 vote, a vote of majority of the entire membership, or unanimous consent. And then finally, the 3rd takeaway there is an affirmative vote to adopt an agenda may not be reconsidered. So once it's been adopted, you can't have a motion to reconsider. But you could, with a 2/3 vote, a vote of majority of the entire membership, or unanimous consent, you could modify your agenda after it was adopted.
Question?
Yes?
Robert's rules, and for that matter, state law in many cases, bows to the bylaws of other organizations. And so if something different is written in the bylaws, that supersedes or supplements Robert's Rules of Order, as I understand it.
That is correct. If your bylaws have specific or specificity that goes beyond what Robert's Rule says, then you would follow your bylaws.
Okay, we might want to consider that in the bylaw revision to see if there's anything we want to write up.
You can see your committee members are nodding their heads. They're considering. They've been considering for 5 months now.
Good, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
couldn't hear that. Is this amplified? Even next door, I can't hear you properly.
I just said there will not be a vote on physician credentialing because there was not an executive medical meeting
For this month,
to
for month of
provide
May.
any list of people to be credentialed.
Oh, yeah, I guess that agenda should have been changed to remove that then. Yeah. I was puzzled why we didn't have something to support that.
No, maybe.
Well, at this point, I think it's already taken care of.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I'd like to remove these from consent agenda because I have a very minor change to one of the minutes.
So you want to, so you don't want them to be either in the minutes, either the 10th or the 23rd?
Well, since we're going to remove one of them in order to provide for a comment, I just suggest and that's the only item. The other item we can deal with separately or as a consent agenda, but it's only one item. See the point?
I'm not sure that I do.
If he pulls one out, then you've got to deal with it both separately anyway.
Yeah, okay, okay. So do you want to change it, or we want to
Well,
leave it as it is?
Perhaps we could
Because-
approve the minutes of May 10th.
May 10th? Okay.
I move with approval of the minutes of May 10th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. All those in favor of approving the May 10th, 2018 regular meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any disapproval? Okay, then that passes. And then we want to put the work study on a separate,
Well, a separate vote, because
Yes.
I just have a very minor correction, and that is that it does not say minutes on there, on the title page. It just, we should follow our pattern of indicating the word in minutes. So that's clear, it's not an agenda, it's the minutes. You know.
okay, so it seems to me if it doesn't say it and it's not clear, then maybe we should just leave that for the next meeting?
Oh,
It
no,
should come back?
it needs to be changed. It's
Can we
very
change it?
simple.
He wants the
It's a
minutes
simple
just add the word.
change.
Add the word?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could approve the minutes as amended.
Is there approval, a second to approve the, is there a motion to change the title of the minutes, adding the word minutes to the May 23rd, is that what it was?
I make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, do we approve the May 23rd, 2018 work study minutes with the change of the comment that it says minutes on it? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, so that's been approved with an amendment. And there's no finite, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
No.
Okay, we have 4 ayes and 1 no. Before we move,
Pardon me, maybe it's too late, but I'd like to have roll call vote on that. I'll make the.
okay.
If you want to do that, we can do that. Roll call vote for the passing of the warrants.
Okay.
Yeah.
President Norris,
Yes.
Vice President Perrin,
Aye.
Secretary Spikers,
Aye.
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
Commissioner Pollard.
No.
Thank you.
I think that business about the consultant is a separate item on the agenda. So I don't think it should be considered as part of the finance committee report. Isn't that true, Mr. President,
No, he made a presentation, he came to the finance committee, talked to the finance committee first, so it was the finance committee that we have it under.
But it's a separate item on the agenda, so I think we need to deal with it there.
Hey, can I comment on that? Yeah, so you have two items that may seem similar. You have the item under the Finance Committee report, and that's item B, which is the proposal from Compensation Connections, which is to take a look at receiving outside expert consultation regarding CEO compensation. So the question there is whether or not the organization should engage the firm Compensation Connections
Oh, I see.
in order to get information about how to structure a compensation package for the CEO. They also provide comparative data, as Commissioner Spiker was talking about.
Okay.
The other thing on the agenda that also relates to, to me, is the CEO evaluation form. And that's,
We've got the other form on there, don't we? Let's see here.
okay, I'm just drawing a distinction between two items on the agenda. So one is about consultation regarding compensation. The other is about selecting one of the forms for my evaluation that were provided. Well,
That's under new business.
so they are actually two very distinct items on the agenda.
Yes.
Madam President,
Commissioner Pollard.
I feel uncomfortable that this was broached in the Finance Committee rather than in the board, at the board meeting, the first time. Once it gets I realize the Finance Committee is very receptive of things like this and
Which this
consultants.
are you referring to? You're talking about?
I'm referring to what is being proposed now, I think is on the table, which is the discussion about engaging a consulting firm to establish some kind of performance-based compensation. I believe that whole question should have started in the board itself, not the finance committee.
Can I,
Yes, you can.
may I make a,
Commissioner Spiker.
thank you. This was brought up at the last board meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
We went over it as a board.
Yes,
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the fact that it was first introduced the prior month in the finance committee
No.
and came with a head of steam into the board meeting.
No, that's not correct.
That's
Commissioner
not,
Pollard.
Yeah, Commissioner
you know
Pollard.
what, let's get this correct,
Let's
Commissioner.
get it correct.
Because
You
No,
can't
let's
not
not
make
make-
a personal attack.
I'm not, I'm
excuse
just
me.
saying,
The
Don't
board
say
had-
you, let's just talk about the issue.
Order.
all right, Commissioner Pollard, if I may, this was brought up for the first time at the board meeting, and I told everybody to take a look at it. We were told, we weren't given this at all, I don't think in the board, in the finance.
No.
We just heard it was coming, and because we voted as a board
Yes.
3 months ago to do this, I suggested that we take a look at it. It will be on the agenda this month. So as far as ramming it down anyone's throat, or whatever you
I
phrase
didn't
it,
use that term.
okay, well, whatever, but same
Point of
difference.
order.
No, not a point of
I will
order.
not recognize point of order until we let Commissioner Spikers finish, and then somebody else may speak.
I suggest you go back to
And the chair will
the
Point of
recognize
order, Madam Chairman, I think when a point of order is
You're
raised,
interrupting
you have to
again.
interrupt.
You're always interrupting.
Commissioner Pollard, would you?
Now,
put
that's
up-
another attack and
The
bullying that I had to put up with from Mr. Spikers.
Would you please address the chair and the chair?
That's what I was
asked-
trying to do. I called for a point of order.
All right, so there's a point of order, Madam President, so Mr. Pollard should be able to address the point of order. You will rule on his point of order and then move on with Commissioner Spikers as appropriate. You need to hear what his point of order is.
So we stopped listening to.
Just for
I thought the
momentarily-
chair was recognizing Commissioner
I
Spikers.
understood you recognize him, but a parliamentary procedure does allow for a point of order, but you don't know what the point of order is. You may
Okay.
simply say, you're out of order, Mr. Pollard, and I'm not going to listen to your point of order, but you need to at least hear that.
Okay.
first.
Commissioner Pollard.
Factually, this was initially introduced in the Finance Committee when it should have been initially introduced into the board. That's my point of order. Therefore, what I'm objecting to is some false information about when this began and where it was introduced. It was introduced into the Finance Committee, not the board. Then it got a head of steam and came to the board.
That's
Can
an
I get a point of
argument, that's
clarification?
not a point of order. What is the point of order
A
specifically?
point of order is constant bullying and personal attacks from
That's
Mr.
not-
Spikers. That's a point of order.
I think you can move on. Decorum in debate, you're supposed to all refrain from attacking the member's motives, not addressing the member, and not make comments about the member's motives. All your remarks should go through the chair.
Thank
You should
you.
avoid the use of members' names. You should refrain from speaking adversely on prior actions or prior meetings that occurred. So I think the point of order now has been heard. I think you can move on with Commissioner Spiker's statements, and I just remind you the decorum requirements.
Commissioner Spikers.
Yeah, thank you. As a matter of fact, I disagree as to when this came up. This came up at the last board meeting. We were told about it in the finance meeting, but we didn't know any of the specifics. We didn't know anything, and we didn't know anything about the costs, anything like that. My understanding, and the fact that the board voted about 90 days to 20 days ago, I think,
to move on to get an independent person to determine a compensation structural package for the CEO. And I believe it's by law has to be independent. So that the board as a whole did vote unanimously. So I'm not sure where this is coming from, I guess, and that's the record.
Does anybody else have a
Yeah,
comment?
may I comment for the record?
The chair recognizes Commissioner Herron.
Thank you. My recollection, this was brought up at the initial item was brought up in our last board meetings, and I specifically remembered some of the questions I asked the lady when she was presenting this to us. And so, yes, it wasn't brought up the first time at the Finance Committee, it was at the board meeting. Thank you. I just wanted
Is
to
there any more
clarify.
discussion? It sounds like, okay, then we will move on with looking at the document. And I was not at the board meeting, the last board meeting, so I don't have any recollection of what happened. Commissioner Young, do you have something to say?
No,
Okay.
move on forward.
Yeah, moving
All
forward.
right, so moving forward, I call for a motion.
On what?
Okay.
So I call for a motion to right now to look at the CEO compensation plan consultation and a proposal from the Compensation Connections Action.
That should be a separate item, Madam. I don't see that on the agenda.
We have Finance Committee, and this is coming from the
Right there.
Finance Committee. Finally,
It's right there.
we just did Moss Adams, and now
It's
we're
on the
down at
agenda.
C, yeah, it's on the agenda.
Okay, I make a
There's where
motion.
you have a problem again, that this should be new business and not part of the committee agenda. So.
But it was adopted as your
Madam
agenda,
Pre, yeah,
as an
Madam
action item
it has
in
been
that
approved.
position on the agenda
Yeah.
under the committee report.
Yes, it was.
So you should proceed with it, and then we need to address in the future how this might be arranged.
Okay.
All right, so we have it as an action item, correct? Or no, the CEO plan, it's an action item. Is there any discussion about it?
I also would like to comment that we should limit our comments to at least 4 minutes for sake of time.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Limit our comments to what?
To no more than 3 to 4 minutes for sake of time.
Point of order. The Robert's Rules of Order state that when you're recognized, that you should have up to 10 minutes.
And I didn't recognize you, Commissioner Pollard. I had recognized Commissioner Herron, so.
No, when I was speaking, she's complaining about this.
Yeah, but you
All right,
didn't,
may I be recognized?
not quite yet, please. Is there anything else you have to say, Commissioner Herron?
Let's move on.
Okay. Commissioner Pollard, do you
Well,
want
I
to address
just
the
want to
chair?
remind everybody, and we haven't followed this, the Robert's Rules of Order says that when you're recognized, you should be given 10 minutes. And if with small boards and small groups, more, or maybe more, that's the way I think they put it. Is that right?
I think they allow, it's permissive to go beyond that. In informal or smaller boards, the president can grant additional time by permission or request. I think, though, to be clear, Commissioner Herron's was only a suggestion that you should limit your comments to 4. She was not directing that you must be limited to that. So, Madam President, you can move on.
Hearing none, do I have a motion to put it to a vote?
I make the motion to put it to a vote.
Do I have a second? Commissioner Herron, second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll all vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Thank you.
A roll call vote, please.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
President Norris,
Aye.
Vice President Herron,
Aye.
Secretary Spikers.
Aye.
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
Commissioner Pollard.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From Commissioner Pollard.
I think Mr. Spikers made a suggestion to the committee that we all got copies of. The thing that I'm concerned about is I think I sent to you, Commissioner Herron, a question about whether we're going to have rules of procedure and so forth. And I never got a response. And I was just wondering, we're asked to submit ideas and questions and so forth. How do we do that when we have two different buckets and we're not sure, does this go in this bucket or that bucket or
Oh, well, I think, if I remember, we did talk about, we reviewed the bylaws, the existing bylaws, and we looked at to see which of the items on the bylaws ought to go to the rules for, rules of procedures and what goes on the bylaws. And we even indicated, I believe, B for bylaws, O for order, what is it? And we have discussed that already. So, and that if you were to have any more questions, you would have submitted that, and I think you did.
Yeah, I just recall that when
And
we
that's why
went through
we-
this process before,
Yes.
Jay Rodney, who was in charge
Uh-huh.
of that largely in terms of writing it up, gave us interim reports. He gave us a set of bylaws that were marked up with colored changes.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And we're not seeing any of that now. I think it would be helpful if we could get interim drafts and somehow not just wait to the very end and say, here it is.
No,
The
yeah.
committee wanted to approach it holistically rather than piecemeal,
Yeah.
so that rather than having you approve one piece at a time, is to put the full package together, and then as you view it, it can be sliced and diced. But the committee has a holistic approach where they want to review everything. And so if you have a suggestion, they'll make a discretionary decision as to should that go in the rules and the procedures side, or should it go over in the bylaws? And then it's all going to come back to the board, and the board can say, we think you put it in the wrong bucket, and then we will have a discussion about moving it. But I think the committee really wanted to approach it much more holistically, and
Well,
they're taking on a lot of issues. We discussed 6 different specific issues that they had me research last meeting, and they gave me 4 more for our next meeting. So I don't know if I answered your question, Commissioner Pollard, but I think their approach is not to try and give you a little piece at a time, but give you the full package to look
Well,
at, and then you can take it apart if you
May I
need to.
respond then?
Oh,
Or
absolutely.
you're asking me if that satisfied me?
No, I'm wondering if I was clear in my explanation. I wanted to make sure I tried to answer your question. I'm not sure I did.
I'm not totally clear because I'm not asking for
Thank you.
piecemeal submissions. When Jay Rodney would
Yeah.
give us a draft of the changes, we saw the whole thing with changes marked in red or whatever, so we could quickly identify the whole bylaws proposal and what changes are being proposed. I think we ought not to wait until the very end, and it's not word that sounds very good, holistic. Maybe the best thing would be for me to send you a copy of the bylaws and process when Jay Rodney was doing it, because I think it was very good.
Understood. I'll pass that on to the committee. The committee is already doing red line strikeouts, and we do have red line strikeouts. But their decision at this point is not to bring those back to the board until the entire document is ready.
Well, I think the board might want to see it in the process.
I'll pass that on.
So I may send you a copy of the Rodney markup.
Understood. Thank you.
I would like to make a comment. Commissioner Pollard, I think the board would then need to vote. If you're saying the board, I think right now you're speaking for yourself. However, one thing I would like to agree with Commissioner Pollard is that last time when we went over review, it was 2 meetings late at night. So I would hope the one advantage to getting something ahead, at least sections ahead, is it would avoid that long night and 2 or 3 meetings
Yeah.
where we had a lot of debating and a lot of discussion that became pretty lengthy. So that would be my concern.
But one of the consideration that we did also was that we were all asked to review the existing bylaws and make your comments and submit them. And I know you sent one about,
Mr.
About
Spikers
conflict
was
of
the first
interest?
to send something.
you sent one to me about conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And that is part of the work that we are looking into, because that was one of the issue that you have. So, you know, we have our own our old bylaws that we can comment if we see something that's, you know, irregular or whatever. And so this is the opportunity. I think that's the consideration that the board have, you know, have requested from the commission to at least, you know, give us your input.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, Commissioner
I
Pollard?
think you made a very good point about having late night meetings and struggling over these things
Because there was so much.
because I think we should remember that there were no bylaw revisions from 2008 until 2012. It's supposed to be done every 2 years. 2010 was missed. 2012, there were bylaw revisions that were finally published in 2013. And then the point is, it was December of 2012 or even January of 2013, if we can work that in. So we have until the end of the year to get this done and be on schedule, and then we will have done something that prior boards didn't do, and that was do bylaw revisions every 2 years. We'll be back on track, but we will be back on track if we get this done by the end of the year or even January in terms of every 2-year revision. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pollard.
I'm going to say it will be done before the end of the year.
Thank you, Commissioner Young.
We're meeting we met before this meeting, we met before the last board meeting, and we'll meet again. And we've got our work cut out for us.
I believe it. Thank you.
First one's our
Oh,
old.
Commissioner Pollard, did you have a question?
Yes, I had a
Sample
question,
one.
and that is, how many commissioners downloaded and printed out these options? I'm asking the board. How many have you
This is a lot for me to
downloaded
print.
and
I did
printed
not
these out?
download it.
No, I didn't.
I read it.
And the purpose of the question
I
is
just-
that we did not download. I think that probably commissioners would admit that they did not download and print out about 50 pages, which means that we got those tonight only. And what I'm saying is, to really study these, this should be in a work session or something where we actually drill down on these. I'm very opposed to the one we used last year. This is just another status quo. It's easier to approve what we've done in the past. That's a terrible evaluation form, in my opinion. And I think I'm very sensitive to this because we wasted $100,000 because we did not handle the performance evaluation of the prior superintendent in the proper way, and as a result, we ended up paying two.
Point of order that goes to a past
No,
issue.
this is relevant to the need to do this right this time.
Commissioner Pollard, I do believe the book of order, the Robert's Rules of Order says you cannot go back to old decisions and bring those up when discussing something that
I
we're
don't think
discussing.
there's any such thing.
The Robert's Rules of Order say you are to refrain from speaking adversely on prior action not pending. In debate, a member cannot reflect adversely on any prior act of the society that is not then pending, unless a motion to reconsider, rescind, or amend it is pending, or unless he intends to conclude his remarks by making or giving notice of one of those motions. So, not having a motion pending, that isn't prior action that should not be addressed at this time.
That is, unless I have the intention to offer a motion to what? Say that again.
Unless you are offering a motion to rescind a prior motion.
No, I think at the end you said something different.
Or unless he intends to conclude his remarks by making or giving notice of one of these motions. One of these motions would have been a motion to reconsider, rescind, or amend. There was no prior, there's no
Okay.
motions pending.
Thank you, I won't debate the point because we're running out of time.
Commissioner Young has something.
Commissioner Young.
As for printing out or whatever, I sat and looked at it on the computer. I'm not much for printing out things, and that's where my decision came from.
Okay.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I did not use the word rubber stamping.
I know, but I use that word, but
I think that,
it's in the-
this was a kind of personal attack. We can have differences on
Commissioner
policies.
Pollard, I think
But, may I
that's,
state my point of order?
what is the point of order?
Well, I said that, first of all, this is now in a form of a personal attack. I did not use the term rubber stamp, and she was responding to me by using that term and so forth. I did say it is the status quo because it's trying to use the same form that we used last year.
Can I as chair, and I probably can't, but can I not recognize what he's saying as being,
You can identify that his point of order has been heard, and then you would rule on it and say, thank you, Commissioner Pollard, and not take any further action. But if he does address a point of order, you have to acknowledge the point of order so that he can identify what it is. Now, once you've heard what you believe to be his concern, then you can rule immediately and say, thank you, and remind all the members to refrain from attacking a member's motives or addressing persons individually, acknowledge it, move on.
okay, thank you.
But I would just caution that I don't think the members are addressing their comments towards others when they make a statement. I think we're being a little sensitive about, are they making that comment because I said something or in response to it? So I would just encourage the board to move on and try to keep your comments limited, very specific to the topic. And try to avoid, even if it looks like it was in reference to somebody else that spoke prior.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Do you have anything else to say, Commissioner?
I'd just like to say that
Addressing
with
this issue?
respect to Robert's Rules of Order, there's a principle in Robert's Rules of Order that says the majority will decide, but the minority will be heard.
Absolutely. That's the whole tenet of it. Correct.
And therefore, let's make sure that the majority is not bullying the minority, because each one...
I take point, that's a
May I
point of order.
finish my point?
I'm gonna the word bullying is not necessary.
Well, I mean, the chair can interrupt you and she can admonish you and tell you not to use certain words that are,
What words can I not
well, I
use?
think she's
Bullying.
concerned about bullying.
You said
Well,
the
I've
word
been
bullying.
bullied ever since I joined the
Commissioner
board.
Pollard, we're not here to make those kind of accusations. We're here to do
But at any
business, the
rate,
hospital district.
the
I
majority
appreciate that.
rules what the minority will be heard. And there've been many times when I, in the minority, have not been heard, even though in 2 elections I represent 4,500 people. It's not just you, as you mentioned earlier, not you, Mr. Pollard. No, I'm representing 4,500 people that voted for me.
I think you can move on now.
Thank
But-
That's what I was just gonna say. Can we just please move on to public comment?
First,
With respect,
excuse
Madam
me,
Chair.
we will not, I guess we're not gonna view, yes.
Joan made a motion
to move to
to
public.
move on to public comment. I seconded it. Now there's a vote on the issue, on the
we haven't
motion.
had a discussion on the motion.
I think,
There is no motion pending to discuss. This was a discussion in general as to the topic on the agenda. In essence, I think you would view that motion from Ms. Young as a motion to close this discussion, move on to the next topic. That was her motion, that has been moved, that has been seconded, that has been approved. And so the action item is when you'll come back and have an actual motion
For the
that
action.
you'll vote and debate on.
And the motion will be a selection of the...
I don't know what the motion will be, Mr.
No, I
Pollard.
mean, it's scheduled, is it not?
Approval of the CEO, it's right
New
here.
business,
New
under new
business will be
business.
an action item.
The topic is to choose one of those 3, but I don't know yet the motion. So now that that motion has passed, you should move on to public comment, then you'll come back to this action
Let's
item.
move on to public comment.
And was that vote to move on unanimous? Did you all vote?
To move on, yes, because there's no
Unanimous.
motion
Thank
on
you.
the table. So therefore,
Thank you.
move on unanimously.
Thank you for permission to do that, Commissioner.
I'm not giving, that's a snotty
Do
remark.
do we have
We
public
don't need that
comment?
kind of snotty remark.
Wait to hear him talk.
Sarcastic remark. Whether it was, the form was printed out or read on the computer, I'll be willing to bet you, if everyone were honest, they did not read these 50 pages. So
Oh, I did.